the town of Redstone had a way of burning slow. Not just in summer, when the Arizona sun pressed down on the adobe rooftops like a flat iron on linen, but in the way it wore people down season after season, bleaching the paint off storefronts, cracking the earth in the main road into a mosaic of dry amber tiles, turning even the young into something leathered and squinting, and permanently suspicious of the horizon. Clara Weston had not been broken by Redstone. She had broken it, in her own quiet way. She owned the only decent saloon south of the canyon ridge, the Copper Kettle, and she ran it with the kind of precision that made men feel both welcome and slightly afraid. She poured fair measures, she extended credit to ranchers after a hard season. She kept a sawed-off shotgun behind the bar, and had used it exactly once, 3 years ago, when a drunk from Tucson had decided the world owed him something she was not selling. He had left walking, but barely. On this particular Tuesday evening in late October, Clara stood behind the bar and wiped down the same stretch of mahogany. She had wiped 1,000 times before, watching the dust blow sideways past her window in the amber light of dusk. The regulars nursed their whiskeys. Old Emmett played cards with himself at the corner table. Deputy Rowan sat by the door, nursing a sarsaparilla, watching her the way he always did. Too hopefully, too obviously. She was 31 years old. She had gray at her temple that she no longer bothered to hide. She had a laugh that she gave out carefully, like good silver, and a stillness about her that people sometimes mistook for sadness and sometimes mistook for strength. It was both. For 2 years, she had been doing the hard, deliberate work of forgetting Cole Maddox. She had almost finished. Almost. It was past 10 o'clock when the knock came. Not the saloon door, the back door. The one that opened onto the narrow alley behind the building, where she kept her woodpile and her 2 rain barrels and the old Winchester rifle she had not fired in a year. The private door. The one only a handful of people in the world knew to use. Clara set down her lamp slowly. Her hand found the small revolver she kept on the kitchen shelf before her mind had fully processed the thought. She moved to the door in her stocking feet, silent on the plank floor. "Who's there?" she said. Her voice was flat and ready, like a drawn blade. A pause. Then, low and rough, weathered by distances she could only imagine, "It's Cole." She stood very still. The lamp flame trembled in a draft she did not feel. She had prepared herself for many things in 2 years. She had rehearsed this moment in her darkest, weakest hours, lying awake while the desert wind scraped sand across her roof. She had told herself exactly what she would do. She would not open the door. She would tell him to ride on. She would feel nothing, because she had spent 24 months building a wall inside herself, where Cole Maddox used to live. And the mortar had set hard and sure. She opened the door. He looked like the desert had chewed him up, and spit him out somewhere along the road. His duster was caked in red dust. He had a week's worth of beard on his jaw. And a cut above his left eye, that had dried to a dark rust line. His hat was pulled low. His gray eyes, those eyes that had always seen too much of her, found hers in the lamplight immediately, with an accuracy that felt almost violent. He was still the most dangerous-looking man she had ever known. "Clara," he said. That was all, just her name, like an apology that didn't know where to start. "You look like something the coyotes dragged in," she said. "That's about right." He glanced over his shoulder into the dark alley, a quick and practiced scan that told her everything she needed to know. He was being followed, he was afraid, and Cole Maddox being afraid was the most terrifying thing she had ever seen in her life. She stepped aside. He came in. She put coffee on and said nothing while he sat at her kitchen table and collected himself. She watched him in her peripheral vision. The way he positioned his chair with his back to the wall, and his eyes on both doors, the way his right hand never got far from the grip of the Colt on his hip, even when he was sitting still. "Talk," she said, setting the coffee in front of him. He wrapped both hands around the tin cup. Outside, the wind moaned low under the eaves. "I was running a job up in Prescott," he began. He did not look at her when he spoke. He looked at the table, or the window, or some middle distance that only he could see. "Stage line, we were supposed to hit a payroll shipment, clean, fast, nobody gets hurt." He paused. "That was how Vega sold it." Clara sat down across from him. "Rafael Vega." Cole looked up. You know him? Everybody between here and the New Mexico border knows who he is. She folded her hands on the table. Go on. The job went wrong. Someone tipped the law. 3 of our men went down in the canyon, Martinez, Dutch, young Carey who wasn't more than 19 years old. He stopped for a moment, and she saw something move across his face that was too complicated to name. I rode. Vega rode. We got separated in the dark. When I circled back, I found what he'd done. He set the coffee down. He'd taken the strongbox himself. Not the payroll, there was a secondary compartment. Deeds. Land certificates. Water rights to 3 river tributaries feeding the whole South Valley. He finally met her eyes. Enough to own half of Arizona, Clara. Enough to buy judges, sheriffs, territory officials. Enough to build a private kingdom in the desert. She let that sit for a moment. And he thinks you know about it, she said. I saw the manifest before the job. I was the one who read it. Vega never told the others what was really in that box. Cole's jaw tightened. He can't let me reach a town with a telegraph. Can't let me talk to anyone with a badge. 3 days I've been ahead of his riders. Killed one of them outside of Maricopa when he gave me no choice. He looked at his hands briefly, then away. I need 1 night. 1 night to rest, and I need to wire the territorial marshal's office in Phoenix before Vega's men find me here. And you came to me. Clara said. Her voice was very quiet. There was nowhere else. He said it simply, without performance, and I know I've got no right to say that. I know what I left. I know what I cost you. If you want me to go. I'll ride on and figure something else out. He started to push back his chair. Sit down, Cole. He sat. She looked at him for a long moment across the small table, in the light of the oil lamp. With the desert wind working at the walls of her house, she looked at the cut above his eye, and the hollows under his cheekbones, and the gray that had crept into his dark hair. Since she had last seen him, she looked at the man she had loved. The man who had ridden away one morning without a letter, without a word, without anything but an empty space where he had been. And she felt the full, terrible weight of everything she had worked so hard not to feel. Then she stood up, went to the shelf above the door, and took down the tin box where she kept her emergency cash. The telegraph office opens at 6, she said. You'll sleep in the storeroom. I'll bring you blankets. He stared at her. Clara, don't, she said. Don't say anything that sounds like gratitude or apology tonight. I am doing this because Rafael Vega is a cancer on this territory and not because of anything between you and me. Do you understand? Yes? He said. Good. She picked up the lamp. Drink your coffee. She did not sleep. She lay on her bed in the dark listening to the town settle around her. The distant bark of a dog, the occasional clank from the smithy's stalls, the whisper of sand against glass. She thought about the telegram. She thought about Vega's riders. She thought about the fact that Cole Maddox was sleeping 12 feet away from her, on a bedroll in her storeroom, and that the wall she had built inside herself had not held the way she'd believed it would. At 3 in the morning, she heard horses, not 1 or 2, 4, maybe 5, moving slow along the main road, which was wrong. Riders at this hour moved fast, pushed through, or they stopped at the livery. They did not walk their horses at a measured, deliberate pace through a sleeping town unless they were looking for something. Or someone. Clara was dressed. And moving before the thought had fully resolved, she went to the storeroom and touched Cole's shoulder. He was awake before her hand landed. She felt him tense, felt his hand find the colt in the dark. Riders, she whispered, on the main road. Slow. He was on his feet in an instant, moving to the small storeroom window. She watched him angle his face to the glass, peering sideways into the street. 4 of them, he said, barely a breath. That's Queller on the roan, Vega's top man. They know I'm in Redstone. How? Somebody saw me come in. His voice was flat, controlled. Or Vega has a man already in town. He turned from the window. I have to go now, before they start knocking on doors. The telegraph office doesn't open for 3 hours. I know that. Then you'll be dead before you can send the wire. She said it plainly, and the plainness of it stopped him. Cole, think. If you ride out now, they run you down in the desert before sunrise. You can't outrun 4 men in open country in the dark. He was silent. She could see the shape of him in the darkness, the tension in his shoulders, the stillness of a man calculating terrible options. "What are you saying?" he asked. "I'm saying we need to be smarter than they are," Clara said. "And that's not going to be hard, because Rafael Vega has never once in his life had to be smart, he's only ever had to be mean." She picked up her shotgun from the corner. "I know this town," she said. "They don't. They moved through the back passages of Redstone like ghosts." Clara had grown up in this town. She knew every alley, every gap between buildings, every sleeping household and every night watcher. She knew that old Emmett never fully slept and kept a lamp burning low. She knew that the widow Marsh had a dog that barked at strangers, but knew Clara's step. She knew that the space between the feed store and the cooper's workshop was wide enough for two people to stand in. And invisible from the main road, she brought Cole to that space, and made him wait, while she slipped around to the front of the feed store, and watched Vega's riders through the narrow gap between the barrel stack and the wall. 4 men. Hard faces, 2 had rifles across their saddles. The one Cole had called Queller, a lean, pale-eyed man with a thick black mustache, was studying the buildings with methodical patience, going door by door with his eyes in a way that suggested he'd done this kind of hunting many times before. Clara pulled back into the shadows and returned to Cole. "They haven't talked to anyone yet," she whispered, "but Queller's going building by building. He'll reach the saloon inside of an hour." "I need a horse," Cole said. "And the telegraph. Deputy Rowan lives above the land office," Clara said. "He has a key to the telegraph room, it's in the same building, and he keeps his horse in the small pen out back." Cole looked at her. "Rowan? Is he reliable?" Something passed over her face. "He's decent, honest at least. He'll help if I ask him." "And if I ask him? Then he'll probably try to arrest you first and ask questions second." She paused. "You have a price on your head, Cole, $300 out of Prescott." He said nothing to that. "I'll go to Rowan," she said. "You stay hidden. I'll tell him enough of the truth to get him moving. Vega's men in town, the land certificates, the territorial marshal. He'll wire Phoenix. He'll also want to help protect the town, which means he'll get his rifle and his badge and stop being 4 against 1. "That makes it 4 against 2, Cole said. +1, deputy. Better arithmetic than what you had 10 minutes ago." She met his eyes in the dark. "And Cole, when this is over, when the marshal comes and the story comes out, you'll have to answer for what you've done. For Prescott, for all of it. I can't protect you from that." He was quiet for a moment. "I know," he said. Then, lower, "I'm not asking you to." She studied him. All those months of anger and silence and careful forgetting, and here he was, telling her he wasn't asking her to save him. Telling her that the most she could do was enough. Something in that broke a small pieces of the wall inside her, and she let it break without fighting it. "Stay out of sight," she said, and moved into the dark. Deputy Thomas Rowan was not, in the end, a complicated man. He loved Redstone, he loved his badge. He was honest enough, that when Clara came to his window at 3:30 in the morning, with a story about Vega's riders, and stolen land deeds, and the safety of the whole South Valley's water rights, his instinct was not suspicion but action. He had his boots on before she finished talking. He sent the wire to Phoenix at 4:15 in the morning, urgent, territorial-level crime, armed men in town. Then he loaded his rifle, pinned his badge square on his chest, and turned to Clara with an expression that was 3 parts determination and 1 part something warmer. "You should stay inside," he said. "You should know better than to say that," she replied. He almost smiled. Then they went out into the dark town together. By 5 in the morning, the situation had crystallized into something cold and clear. Queller had found Cole's horse at the livery. The animal carried a brand from a Prescott ranch that one of the stable boys recognized. Now the 4 riders had positioned themselves. 2 at the south end of the main road, Queller, and the 4th man, a thick-armed Mexican with a red bandana, moving building to building on the north side. Cole had not stayed hidden. Clara rounded the corner of the cooper's workshop and nearly walked into him. He was pressed against the wall, watching Queller's approach with those calculating gray eyes, and she felt her heart kick hard against her ribs. "I told you," she started. "He's going to your saloon next," Cole said quietly. "Your girl Petra is up early, I saw the kitchen light. He goes in there, she's in danger." Clara looked. He was right. The Copper Kettle's kitchen window glowed amber. Petra, her cook, started the bread at 5 every morning. There was no more time for hiding. Rowan is at the north end, Clara said. 2 of them are south. I'll take Queller, Cole said. You'll get yourself killed. Probably. He looked at her then, really looked at her, in the way he always had, that way that made her feel simultaneously seen and terrified of being seen. Clara, whatever happens after, I need you to know that leaving was the worst thing I've ever done. Not because of what it cost me, because of what it cost you, and you didn't deserve that, Cole, I know. It doesn't fix anything. He checked his Colt in the grayish pre-dawn light. But I needed to say it out loud, in case. She grabbed his arm before she could stop herself. Don't you dare make this a farewell, she said fiercely. You send Queller running and you stay alive and you answer for what you've done in a court of law. Do you hear me? You don't get to do something noble and die. That's not redemption, that's just another way of leaving. He stared at her. Something moved in his face that she hadn't seen there before. Something cracked open and raw. All right, he said softly. All right, she said, and released his arm. The main road of Redstone at 5:17 in the morning was the color of old iron. The sun had not yet cleared the eastern ridge, but the sky had gone from black to deep purple, to the bruised gray gold that preceded full light, and in that half-dark everything had edges without shadows. The dust on the road lay still for once, no wind to stir it. Queller stepped out onto the main road with his rifle raised. He had found nothing in the last 3 buildings and his patience was running the way of hot water. Fast. Maddox, he called. His voice carried the flat authority of a man who knew how these moments ended. Come out and I'll make it quick. Vega just wants the information back. Simple business. The town was silent. Then Cole Maddox walked out of the alley beside the feed store and stopped in the middle of the road. Queller, he said. He stood easy, which was deceptive. Clara had positioned herself at the corner of the Copper Kettle, with her shotgun angled on the red bandana man who had come up behind Queller to his left. She could see Rowan moving carefully between the buildings at the far end of the road, working to cut off the 2 southern riders. You look tired, Cole, Queller said pleasantly. He kept the rifle level. Been a hard few days, harder for your boy near Maricopa, Cole replied. A muscle moved in Queller's jaw. Hand over what you know, Queller said. Write it down, all the names on the manifest, everything you remember. We ride out, you live. And the town? Cole asked. All these people who saw your faces tonight? Queller's silence was its own answer. Cole had expected it. When Queller's finger moved on the rifle trigger, Cole was already moving, sideways and down, the shot raking the air where his chest had been, and the Colt was in his hand and speaking before he came fully upright. 1 shot. Clean. Queller went down in the dust. The red bandana man swung toward Cole, and Clara pulled both triggers on the shotgun. The blast took him in the shoulder and spun him halfway around. He went to his knees shouting in Spanish, rifle clattering away. Not dead but very thoroughly finished. From the south end of the road, 2 more shots. Rowan's rifle, controlled and precise. One of the southern riders pitched from his saddle. The other threw his hands up and started shouting that he surrendered, that he was just hired, that none of this had anything to do with him. The dust settled. The whole thing had taken perhaps 40 seconds. Clara walked out onto the road, with the shotgun broken over her arm, and looked at Cole, who was standing with the Colt still in his hand and blood on his left forearm where the rifle shot had grazed him on its way past. You're hit, she said. He looked at his arm as if noticing it for the first time. Barely, he said. She crossed the road to him, took his arm, and looked at the wound with the same direct practicality she gave everything. A graze, long, ugly, but not deep. Barely, she agreed. He let out a long, slow breath. Around them, doors were opening, faces appearing in windows, Redstone waking up to a morning that had already been eventful. Rowan was walking up the road with his rifle on his shoulder, his expression unreadable. Cole looked at Rowan, then at Clara. I imagine I'm under arrest, he said. Under protective custody, Rowan said, arriving beside them. He looked at Cole for a long moment. The man who had left Clara, the outlaw with a price on his name, the man who had also just stood in the road and drawn Queller away from a kitchen full of innocents. Rowan was not a complicated man, but he was a fair one. Until the marshal gets here from Phoenix. Could be a day or two. I'll wait. Cole said. The territorial marshal arrived on the afternoon of the second day. He came with 2 deputies, and a warrant and a leather satchel full of documents. And he spent 3 hours with Cole, in the back room of the land office, emerging with a look on his face that suggested the situation was considerably larger, and more complicated, than anything Redstone had seen in a generation. The water rights. The land deeds. The names on Vega's list, which Cole had memorized the way a man memorizes something he knows, will either save him or damn him. It would take months to unravel. There would be a trial, or several trials. Cole would be a witness. His role in the Prescott job would be laid out in front of a judge, which would be, the marshal said carefully, a nuanced matter given the cooperative nature of subsequent events. Clara did not hear the full conversation. She heard enough, on the evening of the second day, with the marshal's party settled in the boarding house. And Redstone returned to something approaching its regular low simmer. She found Cole sitting on the steps of the land office in the last gold light of the afternoon. His arm was bandaged. He had borrowed a clean shirt, from somewhere. He looked, for the first time since he'd knocked on her back door, like he might sleep without listening for footsteps. She sat beside him on the step. For a while they said nothing. The desert stretched away to the west. Vast and copper and absolutely indifferent, burning the last of the day's light into shades of amber and rose and deep, ancient red. The kind of sky that made people who'd just survived something feel the full, aching weight of being alive. The marshal thinks I'll do some time, Cole said. Maybe a year, maybe less, with what I've given them, and after. Clara asked. He was quiet. I haven't thought much past the next hour for a while. It gets to be a habit. She looked at her hands, the shotgun callus on her thumb. The ink stain on her right forefinger from the accounts ledger. The hands of a woman, who ran things, who held things together, who had kept herself upright through 2 years of learning how not to need someone. I didn't open the door because I forgave you, she said. I want to be clear about that. I opened the door because you were in trouble, and I'm not the kind of person who leaves people in trouble standing in a dark alley. But those are separate things. I know, he said. And I'm not. This is not. She stopped. Started again. I'm not promising you anything, Cole. I'm not saying there's something waiting for you when you come back. I'm not asking for a promise. He looked at her then, sideways, the way he'd always looked at her when he was being honest about something that cost him. I'm just asking if there's a chance. Not a promise, just a chance. The desert held its silence the way it always did. Without mercy, without comfort, but with a terrible honesty that made false things feel impossible to say. I don't know, Clara said. He nodded. Like that was enough, and maybe it was. Maybe that was exactly the right size of thing for a moment like this. Not a promise, not a door closed, not the clean resolution that stories sometimes pretended life offered, just the open desert and a woman who had almost moved on, and a man who had come back, not to claim her but to tell the truth. And the very small, very fragile, very real possibility that the truth might be enough to build something on, eventually, when the time had passed and the accounts were settled and the dust of everything between them had finally, slowly, come to rest. The sun went down over Redstone. The stars came out, cold and absolute, the way they do in the desert, not like decoration but like fact. Clara Weston sat on the steps a little while longer. Then she went inside to tend her bar. Some doors, once opened, do not fully close again. The desert knows this. It keeps everything, the bones of the lost, the tracks of the ones who turned back, the faint impression in the sand of every soul that passed through and chose, in the burning silence, to stay,